Hi, I'm Adam Katz for dogproblems.com. We had a question on our discussion forum where a couple people, wanted to know about the different types of corrections, and they also wanted to know how it relates to the dog's drives. So basically this is just my conceptualization of how it works. There's really 4 different types of corrections if you really think about it. And as you progress in your training, you'll see that you're kind of going to start using the last 2 types of corrections more than you use the first 2, but it's a process. The first type of correction is really what we can kind of think of as an avoidance type of correction. This is a very firm correction, and this is to get the dog to avoid doing a behavior that he should never do. So this might be something, for example, like biting or digging in the trash. The second type of correction would be the dominance correction. This is also a fairly firm correction. You say correction, usually we mean using the leash and the collar, or maybe the e-collar, or even the flat buckle collar. It really depends on the dog. Usually some type of training collar. So the dominance correction is when the dog directly challenges you. And this might be directly in terms of like a nip, or it might be less confrontational. It might be where the dog absolutely knows a behavior, like he knows what come means and you've gone through the whole process, but he for whatever reason he decides to challenge you. So you're going to go and you're going to correct him for that behavior, because we don't want him to learn that he can challenge us by just ignoring commands, especially commands that he already knows. Now the third type of correction is really more of a motivational correction, and this is a much lighter correction. This is just enough to get the dog to do it. So this would be, for example, when we make the dog sit or we make the dog lay down, we're going to give just enough of a correction to motivate the dog to do it. Because there's going to be a lot of situations where the dog, even if you try and use inducement like a ball or like a piece of food, the dog's just going to say, hey, I'd rather do something else. So we need to use a motivational correction to motivate the dog to get him to do a certain behavior, like the sit or the down. The fourth type of correction, if you will, is really just a simple communication. So this would be, for example, if I'm giving him a direction, or I want him to go pick up a certain object, and maybe he's confused and he goes towards another object, I'm going to use a verbal correction just by saying no to let him know that that's not where I want him to go. I want him to go in the other direction. Okay? So it's really just communicating with the dog. And as you get more advanced, develop more of a relationship with your dog, that's more of what you're going to be doing. We hardly ever, after we've established a proper relationship with the dog, we hardly ever use really the avoidance corrections. In fact, most of it gets to a point where it's mostly either the motivational correction, the very light correction, or just the simple communication. Now, how does this relate to drive? Well, a drive, when we're talking about a dog, is like an extension of an instinct. And in the context of the discussion forum question, we're talking about really the play drive. Now, some dogs have a lot of play drive, have very high drive. Some dogs have very low drive. So if we throw the ball for the dog, and the dog likes to go chase it, but after 4 or 5 or 6 times, he kind of says, that's enough. Well, he's what we would consider a lower drive dog. Now, you're not going to correct a dog into doing something like that, because it's play. You can't correct somebody or something into having fun. Now, we can mix the fun with the work. That's a whole different subject. But you cannot correct the dog for not wanting to play. It just doesn't make sense. If you want a dog that is the type of dog who could just go all day long, chase the ball till he drops, get a dog that's a high drive dog. You're just not going to instill it into a low drive dog. Now, in my book, I talk about drive building exercises. You can build the dog's drive a little bit, but you're not going to take a low drive dog and turn him into a high drive dog. It's just not going to happen. You can go on a scale of 1 to 10. You can take a 4 and bring him up to a 5, or a 7 and bring him up to an 8. But you're not going to take a 2 and bring him up to a 9. It's just not going to happen. So you work with what you have, and you find what motivates your dog. But again, you cannot correct a dog for not playing enough. A good example would be, I love playing guitar, but there's just a point I'm not going to play guitar anymore because it's not enjoyable anymore. So hopefully that illuminates a little bit the difference between the 4 different types of corrections and your dog's play drive. I'm Adam Katz for dogproblems.com. See you there.